like. If you can't get a hold of Adam Lusker, they're more than happy to help you out with any constituent issues. Also, you have a chart on all the overweight exemptions in all the different states, what they are. Interesting to look at. That's been provided with you. And later today, there will be a glossary of trucking terms put up on committee documents. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. First thing we have, also, we're not going to work bills today. We were going to, but I'm going to hold off. Brenda has an eye appointment. Rick's going to be online, so we'll wait. With that, we'll go ahead and start our presentation. Trucking 101, Travis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. As the chair stated, my name is Travis Krauerholtz. I am here on behalf of the Kansas Motor Carriers Association, or KMCA. Some of you have heard this presentation before, so I apologize for the information again. For new committee members, we're excited to kind of give you a brief overview of the trucking industry in Kansas. Before I get started, I would like to introduce a couple of members of the KMCA that I have with me today. I have Patrick Feeney with me today. He serves with me on the government affairs side of KMCA. So you'll see either one of us in the building. Feel free to grab either one of us, ask us any questions. If neither of us have the answer, we will definitely find the answer for you. Also with me today, I have Liz Eisnagel. She serves as the executive director for KMCA. For the members that don't know, we do have a office building down on 29th and Topeka Boulevard. We are contracted with the state to do both renewals and registration for our members and other members of the industry out there. I do want to give a shout out to the team. Right now is our very busy time for renewals. It seems like as soon as the doors open to when they close, there are individuals down there doing their renewals, and they are working very efficiently to make sure that those individuals are in and out and back on the road. So I do want to thank Liz for taking the time out of the very busy schedule down there to be with us today. Any hard questions, we'll make sure to ask her. Also with me is Jamie Bradley. He is the president of KMCA. He is an individual that has volunteered his time to be up here today. He is he lives and breathes this every single day. He is a trucking company and operator, owner, and I want to take the time again to appreciate him for making the drive to be with here for this presentation. I'm appreciative of him being here today. He's kind of backup and our expert that's outside of the Capitol. I'm a little worried that he sat so close to me, so he's going to kick me if I say something wrong. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into this. When the public thinks of trucking companies, they really envision the larger companies, your UPS, your FedEx, but the Kansas trucking industry, there's over 17,000 trucking companies in the state of Kansas, and over 90% of those trucking companies operate fewer than 25 trucks. And actually about 46% of them operate one truck. So in the state of Kansas, the industry has companies that operate hundreds of trucks all the way down to one truck. 49% of Kansas communities depend exclusively on trucks to move goods. The trucking industry pays about $4.8 billion in wages in the state of Kansas, and the average salary is around $57,000. The industry does provide around 84,000 jobs within the state. That's 1 in 14 jobs for the state. So if you go to your local grocery store, you see individuals out there that are, stocking up on supplies for the Super Bowl this weekend. Go Chiefs. Count 1 through 14, and at least more than likely one of those individuals is a part of the trucking industry. So it is a big part of the Kansas economy that's out there. The industry pays about 42% of all taxes and fees owed by the Kansas motorist, despite only driving about 13% of the total miles in the state. The industry paid in Kansas $385 million in both federal and state roadway taxes. So as of January, a typical 5-axle trailer combination paid around $6,000 in state user fees and taxes, and around $10,500 in federal user fees and taxes. These taxes are on top of business taxes. So not only do they pay business taxes, they also pay both these user fees and taxes. During this presentation, you're going to hear me talk about 4 main types of carriers. Those include private carriers. Those are the carriers that transport their own goods. The 4 hire carriers. Those are the carriers that transport goods for others. Interstate motor carriers. Those are the carriers that go across state lines, so from Missouri to Kansas to Colorado. And then intrastate motor carriers. Those are the carriers that operate within the state of Kansas. So, north, south, east, west, but they stay within the borders of Kansas. At KMCA, we represent about 600 motor carrier companies out there. On the top of page 2 there, you'll see a list of what those are. I won't go into those specifically, but they range anywhere from agricultural carriers to the towing and trucking industry as well. Let's talk a little bit about what is required to operate a truck out on the roads. All motor carriers have to have a DOT number. You'll see that DOT number usually on the side of the truck, on both sides of the truck. That is required to operate on the road. That DOT number is used really as an identification for the trucks. Any reporting on safety or anything, they'll use that identification to know where that reporting is with. Kansas does have an exemption to that. Farm registered motor vehicles are exempt from that DOT number if they operate within the state of Kansas. They are also exempt from any FMCSA. You'll hear that quite a bit. That stands for the Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Those are requirements that are out there. They're exempt from those requirements. So let's say you want to operate outside of the state of Kansas and go to Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, surrounding states, or any of the other 40 states. You do have to have authority from the FMCA to do so. There's some requirements to get that authority that include a $300 application fee. You have to have liability insurance. Those limits are around $750,000 for a basic carrier. If you're carrying gasoline, it's about $1 million. If you're carrying any hazardous materials, it's up to $5 million. You do have to pay what's called the Unified Carrier Registration Fee. Those fees are at the top of the next page on page 3. Those fees are based upon the number of vehicles within your fleet. So if you have around 2 vehicles, it's about $46 per year. If you're operating more than 1,000, it's $45,000 per year. So those fees are based upon the number of vehicles that are within your fleet. If you want to operate that motor carrier in the state of Kansas, you do have to have authority from the Kansas Corporating Commission. For the intrastate, those are the vehicles, again, that operate in the state of Kansas. Requirements include a $250 fee. You do financial statements, have liability insurance, cargo insurance, and attend a KCC class. So those are for the carriers that are for hire operating in the state of Kansas. Private carriers follow some of the same requirements. They do have a little bit different requirement where they have a $100 application fee instead of the $200 application fee. And they also do have to attend that KCC safety class. I will get into safety a little later in the presentation. If you're operating, you do have to pay, in the state of Kansas, you do have to pay truck registration fees. You'll see in attachment 2 in the back, kind of the fee schedule for the state of Kansas. That is based upon the gross weight of the vehicle. For an example, we'll use the 80,000 pounds there. So that truck registration fee for an 80,000-pound truck is around $1,870. Some of the surrounding states to match that 80,000-pound truck, semi-trailer combination, you'll see there, Missouri's around $1,700, Nebraska's $1,300, Oklahoma seems to be the cheapest, around $1,200. That $1,800 fee, that does not include a Kansas commercial vehicle fee. You'll see that on the next attachment, attachment 3. That is based off of the gross weight of the vehicle as well as the age of the vehicle. So for this example, again, we'll use 80,000, so it's $400. So to operate in the state of Kansas, you have to pay both that registration fee of $1,870 plus the commercial vehicle fee of $400. So let's say you want to operate outside of the state of Kansas, and how's that registration fee calculated? So if you're operating, outside the state of Kansas, where you're doing Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, those states, you're part of what is called the International Registration Plan. This is a method for registering the fleet vehicles that travel in 2 or more of those states. These fees are collected according to the miles traveled in each state. All fees are paid within your home base, and then that, like the home jurisdiction, home state, and then that is distributed to the other ones. For an example, you'll see there at the bottom of page 4, we kind of put an example together for you. So as you're spending 50% of your miles in the state of Kansas, your registration fee is 50% of that 870. You have 10% of the miles in Missouri, 10% of the fee, and then so forth, 20% Iowa, 10% in Nebraska, and 10% Oklahoma, for a total registration fees of $17,008.50. Again, those are collected within the state and then distributed to the states where you're traveling. If you're operating, again, across state lines, you do have to take part in the International Fuel Tax Agreement that is known as IFTA. 48 states and some Canada provinces are part of this agreement. It's an agreement that motor carriers have to report how much fuel they use within the state, within the borders of that state, and pay the fuel tax based on these reports. This fuel tax really enables jurisdictions to assess highway user fees on all motor carriers that travel on its roads, not just, the purchases of fuel at the pump. This is a quarterly report that really details the miles traveled, fuel purchased in each participating jurisdiction. This was put together to make sure that the taxes and the fuel taxes that are collected in those states are distributed evenly and fairly to the states that are there. Other taxes and fees that our industry has to pay, there's a federal heavy use tax fee. That's an annual tax of $100 plus $22 over the gross weight of 59,999 pounds. There is a cap on that fee. It's $550 for vehicles over the gross rating of 75,000 pounds. So if you're at 75, 76, 77, you'll pay that $550. There is no increase from that one. We do have to pay taxes on tires. That tax is around $36 per tire, $648 for an 18-wheeler. There is a federal tax on new equipment. It's a 12% tax for new trucks and trailers. A truck that's over 33,000 pounds and a trailer that's more than 26,000 pounds. So let's say you're buying a combination of those two, and it's costing you $150,000 a year. That's about $18,000 in a federal tax that you're paying for that. And just like all other motorists out there, we do pay tolls in the state of Kansas and every other state. That typical toll for a 5-axle trailer is around $33 if you're going from the eastern terminal to the southern terminal, if you have a K-tag, and around $43 if you do not. I've spent a little time talking about truck size and weights, and I know some of this was discussed in a bill hearing that we had last week, so apologies for rediscussing this again. But the maximum length of a trailer in the state of Kansas is allowed up to 59 feet 6 inches. Just for an industry standard, it's normally around 53 feet. The maximum width of a vehicle for the state of Kansas is around 8 feet 6 inches, and the maximum height is 14 feet. There is an exception to this. That the state does allow. If you are carrying circular bales, you get an extra 6 inches, so the maximum height is 14 feet 6 inches. The maximum weight, and I believe there's a chart that may be coming you, the chairman said on this for other states, but in Kansas, we allow for, on our interstate system, a maximum of 80,000 pounds. And then on other roads and highways, it's 80,500. So we do allow a little bit more in the state of Kansas for our roads. There is an exemption to this, and it was heard during that hearing as well. It was a bill that was passed, I believe, in 2017, that allowed that maximum weight to go up to 90,000 pounds. Now, there are some stipulations on that bill. It is an annual permit that you pay $200 for every single year. You do have to have a 6-axle or more trailer, so combination. So it cannot be less than 6 axles to operate that. It is for agricultural products only. You'll kind of see a list of that at the bottom of the page that's labeled at the top, House Bill 2009. It includes farm supplies, biofuels, feeds. I won't read all of those, but it's mainly based around agricultural products. Safety still is a big requirement for that. If a road is snow-packed, or there's ice on the road, you're not allowed to do that 90,000 pounds. And then any bridges or highways that have that weight limit sign on there, you do have to abide by those rules. So there are some restrictions for that one, but it was agreed upon bill that we worked on out of the association to try to help some of our agricultural industries out there to get above that 85.5. And definitely during harvest time, that is something that you'll see our members take advantage of it, and members of the state take advantage of. So lastly in the presentation, I want to touch a little bit on safety. I want to pause a second and just say, safety for our association and the industry is at the top of everybody's priority. It's always on everybody's minds. It's something we take down at the association very seriously. If you see there on attachment 1, ATRI, which is the American Research Institute, did a research on safety and what associations can contribute to that safety. And what they found was members that are part of those state associations are involved in fewer crashes and receive fewer violations at roadside inspections than their industry peers. So not just our association, but all associations across the state, across the nation, they take safety very seriously when it comes to it. They highlighted a program down there that I think is pretty cool. It's called a Share the Road program. This program sends teams of professional drivers out to local communities. Those drivers teach passenger vehicles how to navigate around a truck, find that blind spot so they're not getting in the way of that blind spot, and getting out of that blind spot, how to pass the vehicle and merge back safely, and then the stopping distance of that truck. So understand that you're not following too close to it. It's got to have some room to stop if you're going to get into a traffic jam situation. So there are multiple programs out there that we take advantage of, and our members take advantage of. We host a safety council regularly. Liz, is it once next week? Is quarterly. Next week is the next one. So safety is something we take very seriously, and so does the federal level. All commercial motor vehicle drivers are subject to the federal motor carrier safety regulations. At the bottom of page 8 there, and at the top of page 9, you'll see some of those regulations. I won't go into those specifically, but we'll highlight just kind of an overview of them. There's vehicle markings they have to follow, driver qualifications they have to do, in conjunction with their CDL license, emergency equipment that have to be present, lighting on the truck. You'll see driving down the road, trucks got lights all over them. They got reflectors, so you can definitely see that's there. Liability insurance limits that we've talked about already earlier. Texting while driving is prohibited by our individuals, the use of a handheld device. Load securement regulations they have to follow. Vehicles inspected regularly. Maintenance and repair. If a vehicle needs repaired, that repair is done before that truck is put back out on the road, again, to make sure that it is safely navigating, not just for the driver, but for the individuals around it. They record their hours of service, and then there's some pretty big hazardous material transportation regulations that they have to follow. All of the drivers are subject to drug and alcohol testing. This includes pre-employment testing, random drug testing. Companies can do random drug testing, and then post-accident testing. So for drug and alcohol testing, it's pretty heavy for them. Again, this packet that you have in front of you is supposed to serve as a high overview of what the trucking industry is. Mr. Chair, we appreciate the opportunity to come give this presentation to the committee, and happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming today. I'm not sure if this question should be directed to you or to your friend who's, you said, more experienced to this, so I'll let you defer if you'd like. But I'm not asking you to speak on any particular bill. I just wanted to ask a hypothetical. If my intuition is that as a truck is given more weight, more product, whatever it is, that the hazard increases. My first partial question is, do you think that increase is linear, like you increase it 10% and it becomes 10% more hazardous, or do you feel it's more exponential, maybe a 10% increase becomes 20%. And further, I'm actually just interested in talking to a trucker that has handled large loads, and let's just say, for example, that you're at the top end of our state, maybe say 90,000 pounds, and you're maybe we're thinking of increasing that. Maybe I'll just make up a number, 10%. What I'm just wondering what the handling of that truck is like as you go from say 90,000 pounds up to almost 100,000 pounds, and if you feel like the hazard would be such that let's just say if you had a 16-year-old daughter driving near one of those trucks, if you would feel comfortable with that, or if you would find that to be a situation that would maybe you'd frown on as a father. So anyway, I'm just curious. Again, I'm not asking anybody to do math. I know I threw some math out there a little bit, but I'm just interested in the qualitative. I've driven actually some a 10-speed vehicle when I worked road construction. Not even sure if I was permitted to do that or not, but no, it was up in Nebraska, so nobody get in trouble here. But I was hauling cement bags, and as they added, it was sway back and forth, and honestly, I look back on it, probably wasn't a great idea. But anyway, if somebody can speak to that, that would be great.
Yeah, no, thank you, Senator, for the question. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I might let him speak to a trucker here and have maybe Jamie answer that question on kind of the safety of roadways. So, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
No problem. Just come up and state your name.
Good morning. My name is Jamie Bradley. I work for Doug Bradley Trucking in Salina, Kansas. So to address your question, how does it affect the truck? Well, let me start with there are already, of course, trucks going up and down the road hauling those weights. They are oversized, overweight loads. That do happen already. Now, if you're talking about a blanket exemption and how that affects the characteristics of the truck, I will say that the characteristics of the truck have changed dramatically over the years. The technology that's in the trucks, both the physical technology of the stopping and handling characteristics, the technology that's gone in for the monitoring the roadways, the anti-rollovers, the blind spot detection, certainly helps in many ways. And of course, because of the improvements that they've made, you're able to haul those heavier loads more safely than we have in the past. The question of would you feel comfortable with your 16-year-old daughter next to a vehicle of that weight? Once you get over a certain weight, vehicles can cause more damage. There's no doubt about it. But the training that we do with our drivers, the trainings that required of all drivers, especially anybody obtaining a CDL now, must go through a certain amount of training. And that's not been the case in the past. Before you could go into your local DMV, you could take a test, both written and driving, and get your CDL. These days, you're required to go through a certain amount of classroom as well as behind the wheel training. So drivers in general are better trained than they've ever been before. And as an industry, again, I can only speak for myself and those that I know around me in our industry, safety is of utmost priority. There's no doubt about it. And the quality that we're putting into our drivers, the hiring that we're doing, the time that we're spending in training, in monitoring, and helping our drivers become better drivers is the crux of what's going on these days. We're making sure that we're putting the best, safest drivers behind the wheel. I don't know if I've answered every part of your question. Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator Clem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last time I was paying attention, we were a couple 100,000 drivers short in the industry. And I didn't know if Kansas is still short on drivers. And have we seen a reduction in injuries or accidents as a result of the requirement to go to the education that we just talked about? With the majority of our drivers and companies being small, the significant impact of the cost of that education is probably deterring drivers and other folks from being in the industry. I wouldn't mind an opinion on that. And lastly, Mr. Chair, any thoughts around the progress of autonomous vehicles? I know there is some testing going on with that and the role that might play in getting us back up to capacity, or where that might go in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you, Senator, for the question. I'll answer the first one is yes. I think we hear all the time, just like every industry, finding, individuals to work is definitely something that's out there. I will say it seems like it has gotten at least a little better of finding individuals, but it's still something that is definitely on everybody's radar to find people for driving those trucks. And on the safety side, what we're kind of talking about, if you look at that attachment 2, HRE did do that research attachment 1 there. Fatal crashes, they've dropped. Crashes per 100,000 miles, on that by that membership, it continues to go down every single year. So I would say those safety requirements that we are talking about and that Jamie pointed to are helping, make sure that the drivers are safer out there and those crashes continue to go down.
Mr. Chair, layer on one more question to that. As far as, thank you, I think that is helpful on the accidents. Do you find that is because you're driving small businesses out and most of those drivers are now going to the larger companies? I say that just because I have a trucking company and I run rigs and straight trucks, but it's, so I'm not, trying to find drivers is always a challenge. And then having to put up the funds to put them through training is also another challenge. But it was, the goal is safety. So if we are seeing an improvement, I think it's a win. So I appreciate it. And if you'd touch on the autonomous question.
The autonomous question, that's a conversation, I think, for a bigger conversation for maybe a little time, and I'm happy to stop by the office to continue to have that conversation. I will say we are seeing some advances in the technology, but I would say it's probably a little too early to tell about what that is going to do for, finding drivers or filling drivers' needs in those positions that are there. But, again, happy to have that conversation in more in depth at a later time, yeah.
Travis, could you tell me, are most bridges rated by axle weight or are they rated by gross vehicle weight?
I believe, and I'm going to look back to department here on registrations or one of them. I believe they are done on axle weight, right, or gross registration.
Are bridges rated on, when you see the deal like, this bridge limit 20 tons or whatever, is that gross vehicle weight?
It depends on what the marking is.
Okay. Well, I will circle back with the department and find an answer to that question. Yeah.
Could we get Mr. Bradley to give us a little more on what that marking is?
So again, yes, when they mark it on the bridges, generally it is by axle weight, what you're allowed to carry there, but there are certain bridges that are listed as gross vehicle weight as well. But usually it's by axle weight. And axles or tandems, groups of axles.
Excellent, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, looks like you got off easy today, Travis.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Committee, we will not be working bills today. We have 2 people, 1 online and 1 missing. I do intend to start working bills on Tuesday. So work on your amendments if you have any, and with that, we are adjourned.